What's up, fucker?
How the hell are you?
I'm good.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
A little bit tired, you know.
Yeah, you look tired.
I'm wiping the sleep out of my eyes as we speak.
I like it.
Yeah. Ready to fucking do this.
Did you happen to listen to that podcast episode I sent you yesterday?
No.
Brohio?
So, is it 3 guys?
It's at least 2. I think it is 3.
Yeah, I think I listened to it. I actually listened to it. I was listening to that on, what day is it? Monday?
Yeah. That one was deeply entertaining.
Yeah.
Not for, like, the story, but just for, like, the jokes and shit they would tell about butt-chugging Zimas and...
Oh, wait, no, that's not the one I listened to. That
I, like, listened to it, and I was like, fuck, what we're doing sucks. These guys are way funny.
So, yeah. I listened to about, like, probably 5 different things, like YouTube videos, and then like some stuff on conspiracy theories. That channel, have you ever listened to them? All with just like different variations of the same story.
Yeah, and just for context, we're going to talk about the Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk project. It's going to be a long story, and it's nuttier than squirrel shit.
Yeah. So yeah, trying to lay this one out was like trying to straighten out a bag of snakes. Long fucking snakes.
You know, I've actually, like, I've heard the stories, I've listened to a lot, I've seen a lot of stuff over the years, but it wasn't until last night when I was really focusing on getting my notes and everything that I finally got, like, the full picture in timeline and everything. And now that I understand it, actually, I'm like, this is even more bananas than I thought it was.
Yeah, I just it's one of those stories that, like, it keeps on. It's like, that's wild. Yeah. And then you come around the next corner and you're like, holy fuck, are you serious? And then you go there, and then all of a sudden you go to the next turn and you're like, yep, we're doing this, I guess.
Yeah, it's like an open world video game. Yeah. No matter where you turn, there's a rabbit hole to fall down. And then it's like, okay, I got that done, and you get out and you fall into another one, and then another one. And I don't even think, like, you could adequately cover it. No, you know, in 2 hours or 3 hours. Really.
It's literally a D&D campaign.
Yeah, perfect explanation.
No wonder why they based Stranger Things off of this and threw in the Dungeons and Dragons into that lore. So
yeah, and at first you think it's just about, you know, okay, it's the zeitgeist of the 80s in the show, but really it's just like an homage to, hey, this story is fucking bananas.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, I think the way to start that is to go all the way to the beginning, to the Philadelphia experiment. That in and of itself is crazy to think about. Mm-hmm. So basically it is the government commissioned Tesla with the help of Einstein to cloak ships from radar, because German U-boats were just fucking everybody up in the 40s. Not just military, but commerce too, just blowing up trade ships. And
so this is like during World War II?
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
And so Tesla came up with the technology to try to cloak them from radar signals at first by degaussing, which was came up with a new method to basically drag this, like, I think it was a 2,000 amp live wire cable and just drag it across the ship, and it would basically electrify the ship so that mines and the radar tech and U-boats couldn't detect the ship. Mm-hmm. And so that technology actually worked, but the more you travel across the globe, the more the Earth's magnetic field distorts that signal, so it wears off. Yeah. So they're coming up with something more powerful, and these coils with reverse polarity and all this other crazy stuff that I can't wrap my mind around. And allegedly there was a test fire on the ship in 1940. And when they did that, there was no crew aboard, but the ship visually disappeared, which was actually an unexpected side effect. But then in 1943, when they did it for real, it disappeared from Philadelphia and showed up 10 minutes earlier in Norfolk, however you pronounce it.
Norfolk. I'll say Norfolk.
Yeah, I like Norfolk. It sounds better. Go Norfolk yourself.
West Virginia? Is that where that's at?
Mountain Mama.
Take me home.
Country road. Yeah, it's showed up in Norfolk, West Virginia, 10 minutes earlier, and then reappeared 20 minutes later in Philadelphia.
Does it say how long it was disappeared or cloaked?
So, it was disappeared from Philadelphia for 20 minutes when it reappeared, but somehow showed up 10 minutes earlier and then reappeared 20 minutes later. It's weird.
Okay.
Now, the real controversy is the ship's log shows that it was in New York that day.
Yeah.
But it's a paper log for a ship. How hard is that to fake?
Right. And how easy is it to fake that, and like, especially in hindsight, to just write it down in that log.
Yeah, I mean,
later.
If you're doing a secret government program to basically make a ship disappear, wouldn't you like predispose yourself to cover that up before it even happens?
Yeah. I mean, I would.
If you tested it 3 years earlier and you know you can make it disappear, then 3 years later, like the day before, you're going to tell the captain, hey, modify the log to show that you're in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll call the boat yard in New York and say, hey, write this down and we'll send you some money. You didn't see nothing.
I wonder how much of the books are cooked like that just because they can do shit like that. I'm sure it happens all the time.
Guaranteed. I mean, that would be the first way to cast a shadow of doubt on the whole thing. Now, I'm not saying it happened per se, but I'm saying it's
possible.
Well, not just possible. It's reasonable to be like, yeah, we're going to do this thing. We know it does this. We're going to try it again. Let's go ahead and plant that seed of doubt so anybody who saw it can easily be discredited because the books say it was in New York, not in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Or even some of the people that have come out with eyewitness testimony, air quotes, and said that, oh, this didn't happen. I was there at this yard. Like, how much does it take to just pay people off to say that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I saw like an alien land on the front yard right now and the government came and was like, here's, 100 G's. You didn't see nothing. You're right. I didn't see shit.
Yeah.
Is this tax free or?
Yeah, then you can live with the thing saying that you met some aliens and you have $100,000. Fucking win-win, dude.
Yeah. Nobody's going to believe me.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Here's $100,000 to not sound like a crazy person. Yeah.
Or here's $100,000. Make it sound really crazy so nobody believes you.
Maybe that's what it is, because this story gets fucking wild.
It does. So, another thing that makes me really think that they would have just go ahead and, cooked the books on that was, allegedly during this experiment, all the people that were on the ship suffered some severe side effects. So some people were actually fused to the bulkhead of the ship, like literally transphased into the walls.
Right.
A lot of them just lost their fucking mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them died, and some of them just never came back.
Just fucking disappeared altogether.
Yeah, so it's easy to write that off in a court case where the loved ones of those sailors were like, hey, this happened to my family member, I want recompense for it. And they're like, no, this ship was in New York.
Yeah.
The books say so.
Yeah. He jumped ship somewhere in New York and is probably turning tricks on the streets of New York now.
Enjoying that thick, fat slice of pizza.
Yeah.
Or glizzies, as they call them.
Have you ever been to New York?
No.
They do have some good pizza.
You know, it's like on my bucket list to go to Manhattan and try the pizza.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think I'm going to eat anything else, just pizza.
Yeah. I'd say you could skip the hot dogs.
A hot dog is a hot dog.
You know. Well, so I went there, and that was like the two main things that I was like, okay, I have to get some pizza, and I have to get like a hot dog. All the guys at the little street cars are just fucking hot dogs, boiled hot dogs. So not anything great. But there is a place called Gray's Papaya that they sell these like little, and they're really skinny little hot dogs.
Mm-hmm.
But they're actually pretty good. And I mean, but it's still a hot dog.
You know, I'll fight anybody about it. I think the best hot dog you can get is at Costco.
Yeah.
And there's a Costco fucking everywhere.
Yeah. Actually, the best hot dog I've ever had, I don't even think you can consider it a hot dog, was in Seattle. And maybe it was because I was really fucking drunk. We went to, like, the bars, and we were, like, bar hopping. And, at like 3 in the morning, we went outside, and there was a guy with a cart, like a hot dog cart there, but it was a reindeer sausage.
Ooh.
And, he put, cream cheese on it, and then, like, peppers and onions. Dude, it was so fucking good. But, again, I was really drunk, so...
Well, yeah, there's an extra, like...
15... Sober enough to remember.
There's like 15% credibility, because when you're drunk, everything tastes amazing.
That's fucking amazing.
Like,
fucking peppers running down my chin.
You gotta bet those fucking burrito or something while you're hammered. You're just like, here's the best fucking burrito I've ever had.
Fuck yeah, I got eggs like in your beard and shit.
So worth it. So one thing I find really interesting about the engineering of the whole experiment is Tesla came up with this with help from Einstein, right? And then he ran the test in 1940, just the dry run test with no crew. And then the Navy was pushing him to run another test with the crew on board. And he's like, no, this is dangerous. We can't do that. We don't know what's going to happen to the people. And he was subsequently kicked off of the project. And then they brought in, oh, what's his name here? I got it right here, I swear. John von Neumann. They call him Neumann, but it's spelled Newman.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And he took over the project. And then subsequently later on was inducted into the Manhattan Project. Because he was just like, I don't give a shit if I kill people, let's go.
Yeah, so it was like these projects kind of like are connected with so many of the other like classified or conspiracy theory projects that are out there going around. Like these two are connected, and then it's like Project Sky Watcher, whatever, Stargazer,
yeah.
Stargazer project. So all these different things. It's like connected to MK Ultra. It's connected to it's like 3 or 4 other conspiracy theory supposed projects that the government was working on, and but yeah, it like leads me like, okay, so they're connecting it with all these other things, UFOs, time travel. How much of it is true and how much of it is bullshit? Like,
it's easy to speculate, but given the fact that Stargazer, MK Ultra, and there was one more, which I strangely didn't write down. But there's also we'll touch on it later. Trying to read your own handwriting is fucking stupid. Remote viewing.
Yeah.
So all these projects that the government has come out and said, yeah, these are real. And because of Freedom of Information Act, we know about them and shit like that. And then the government copped to and was like, yeah, these things happened. Or Project Midnight, or all these other things. And strangely, they're all tied into Philadelphia and Montauk.
Yeah.
Now with Philadelphia, what I find like the most interesting about it is the two brothers that were engineers on the ship. There's Ed and Duncan Cameron, and they allege that while the ship was like glowing green and they were transmuting through time, that they jumped over the side of the ship, just totally bailed. Which, what would give you the wherewithal to just jump out while you're in like a time warp?
Yeah.
You're
or
like,
just on a fucking Navy ship, and then you're like, I'm out of here, and you just jump over the side.
they're like the living SpongeBob meme. Alright, I'm out.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, what
I'm
compels
a head
you?
out.
What compels you to be like, yeah, the ship is glowing, everything around us is red and orange, we have no idea what's going on, let's just jump.
Yeah. And so supposedly they jump overboard, and instead of landing in the water, they land like in a field, don't they?
They basically land outside of Montauk.
Yeah.
Which they were gaffled up really quick by MPs and taken to go see somebody inside Montauk, which was John von Neumann. But he was visibly older.
Right.
And he greets them by saying, "Welcome to 1983, 40 years later."
Right.
Which is really cool science fiction.
Yeah.
Like,
hello, boys. Welcome to 1983.
I haven't seen you in like 40 years. How you been? I don't know. It was like 5 seconds since I seen you. But...
We've been waiting for you fellas for 40 years. No, I'm going to stand here while you suck this cock.
Well, you don't have identification or money, so you got to earn your way somehow.
We'll take this thing old school.
You know what? Not even the strangest thing that happened in Montauk.
Nope. It would be fucking right in line, I think.
Yeah, that kind of... Oh, wait. I got a note here that I wanted to touch on. So, going back to the crew members, there was 2 crew members that had burst into flames, and their bodies burned for 18 days. Couldn't be extinguished.
Holy shit.
Of course, this is alleged, but you know, you had the ones that were fused to the bulkhead, and then the ones who just went crazy, the ones who died, the ones who never came back, and then you had these 2 that, while they were still alive, they claimed their bodies were ice cold, and then just randomly burst into flames. But the fact that they burned for 18 days was just like, what?
Yeah. I wonder how long a body actually burns for.
No comment. Depends on how hot the fire is.
I guess. Yeah. So there was a lot of accounts of like Montauk was talking about like, we'll get into that later. Never mind. But like 18 days, that's a fucking long time for anything to burn. I mean, I would assume a body would burn for probably maybe, I don't know, 10 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say 8 or 10 hours. If the fire's hot enough, 8-10 hours at the most, I would think.
Yeah.
You'll still be left with bone fragments, but...
And was there nobody, like, trying to put out the bodies, or...?
I would assume that they were, like, trying everything.
It was just, like, standing there with the hose. Well, that didn't work, and just fucking walk away.
Fire extinguisher? Nothing. Let's just throw them in the ocean. Nope, they're still fucking burning.
Just tie a chain to them and fucking throw them in the ocean.
Just dip them.
Yeah.
Bloop.
So where are we at?
So
They have transported through time to 1983. They meet up with von Neumann, and he takes them into the facility at Montauk, correct?
yeah,
Okay.
and here's where it really starts turning. Is everything with Montauk is like, holy shit, left field, out of pocket.
Yeah. So, just to set the scene here, Montauk, there is a base there called Camp Hero that was built in the early 1940s as a gunner's nest, I guess.
This is a radar station.
So before it was a radar station, it was
yeah.
It was built as a so it was disguised as a fishing village, and there was kind of 3 bunkers that were gun ports with heavy guns there for because it's right on the ocean, so it was to protect from German U-boats. So they had 3 big guns there. The whole village was it was a army station or a naval station, and they disguised it as a fishing village. Mm-hmm. And so this whole village was just painted on windows and just disguised to look like something that it really wasn't. Like they had a building that was the gymnasium that was disguised as a church, and so it just looked like a normal little seacoast town, but it was actually a battery to defend against any sea ships and U-boats. After World War II ended, it kind of got decommissioned. It was just like a skeleton crew that worked there, and then when the Cold War picked up, then it was turned into a radar and radio station to try to detect. It was an early detection radar place that they would, they could, if we had any incoming missile strikes or anything, they would give us a half an hour warning system, pretty much. So it became that after that, and then after late 80s, it was decommissioned and then kind of abandoned, and then that's what it is now. It's just now that's whole a state park area. I don't, what is it called? Something park. Can't remember. It's a state park.
For some reason I didn't write it down.
Just those facilities now are just kind of there's a fence around most of the facility.
Yeah, you're not allowed. Allegedly, not allowed to go there.
Yeah, but
people have gone there.
No trespassing signs, but people still go there.
It's just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Until some military guy comes out and shoots you in the face,
or until some Demogorgon comes out and fucking.
Until you see a small young girl with a buzz cut hair just comes out of nowhere and just scrambles your brain.
Yeah. Or lifts you up into the air and starts choking you and busts all your bones in your body.
That sounds terrible.
So that's where this base is, and that's where these tests or experiments are said to happen.
Yeah, and that's where Ed and Duncan Cameron come back into the play, is because John von Neumann brings them in and eventually inducts them into the program, where they use the Montauk chair,
mm-hmm.
which is a very fabled thing, which is also one of the most interesting things, because allegedly it was built using technology recovered from UFOs, hybridized with our own technology. And when you're in this chair, you have all these psychic abilities like manifestation. You can manifest an item just
mm-hmm.
out of thin air. You can remote view different places. You can time travel. You can travel to other planets, to other galaxies. Basically anything science fiction, this chair can do it.
Yeah. And allegedly the way that they would do this is they would take the satellites that they were saying were allegedly these tracking satellites, and they could broadcast a frequency that was between 425 to 450 megahertz. And so they would triangulate the satellites and direct them into the chair so that your body's getting blasted with this frequency that's supposed to increase psychic abilities.
Yeah, until that wasn't enough, and they started basically abducting homeless kids or runaways.
Yeah.
Kids between 10 and 15 years old, and they all fit a physical profile. They were all tall, slender, blonde hair, blue eyes, and they would basically use them as batteries to supply whoever's
Aliens?
Aliens? They would supply whoever was in the chair with more energy to be able to travel or do any of these other number of things that they could do. Side question. If you could use the chair and you had access to all these abilities, what would you do?
I don't know, dude. I would probably go back and try to kill Jesus.
That was a yeg answer. Did you text him for that?
No. That's just... that comes into play later on.
Yeah.
That's just a preface.
As though the story wasn't crazy enough. There's so many more twists and turns. Yeah, so Ed wasn't as good in the chair as Duncan was. Duncan was actually really skilled at it. So they went to different timelines. Where'd it go? So the first place they went was 2137. And there was an apocalypse that happened. There was a nuclear war. All the major cities in the world are decimated. The population of the human race is roughly 100 million people, and they haven't rebuilt society, but their technology keeps advancing, and they've eliminated disease and all these other things, but they're still living in like a dystopia where everything is just still ruins and everything. And then they travel again to 2749, 300 years later, or 150, whatever it is. No, I'm not mathing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a perfect utopia. AI is in control. There's no war, no disease, no famine, no nothing. There's no governments. Everybody lives in peace and harmony and blah, blah, blah.
AI takes care of everything, and then the humans just like live out whatever their desires are, or
they're free to
passions.
pursue creativity and
Right.
passion projects, and nobody wants for anything. Which to me, I would have been like, I'm not fucking going back. This is where I'm staying.
Yeah.
But and then they traveled to another planet where there was the tall gray aliens, communicated with them, and there was nothing like consequential that came out of that story. I think it was just like a little addition to it. But the one that I did like was they went to this planet. It was like a jungle planet, and all of their housing, their buildings, and everything was built directly into the jungle. And Ed was like, I don't think we should be here. And Duncan was like, yeah, they don't want us here either. Points over his shoulder, and there's like these reptilians.
Lizard people.
Lizard people. The lizard people. Yeah, there's a little shout out to the Y-Files.
Yeah.
I love that show.
Yeah.
Like, that should just be a full network show.
It should be. But, you know, I think that he's going through some weird shit with his channel, though. Like I think he's getting kind of blocked on YouTube for some shit.
Well, he's definitely doing more of like the Patreon work now.
Yeah.
Which there's more money in that. I get that. But it's like, I like the more soundbite style shows that are like between 30 and 40 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And he lays out the whole story, but then he'll go on to do these Patreon episodes that are like 2.5 or 3 hours, and I'm like, I don't have that kind of free time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've laid this timeline out, and that's to a point where I think we have to jump back now.
Agreed.
To a different timeline. So, we'll go back to, say, 1983, 84. In our current situation or our current belief system now is that like none of these projects actually happened. Okay, and there's this guy that working in this area around Long Island, somewhere around there. So this is Ed. This is Nichols again, right? He.
So yeah, Preston Nichols.
Preston Nichols.
Yeah, he was the. Oh, I can't remember his title, but he went from an electrical engineer to basically like the head of the project at Montauk. So he worked with Ed and Duncan the whole time.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was basically in charge of the whole thing.
Well, so he was. This is so weird. So he worked at this place like ITT or something. AIT or something.
Yeah.
It was like a electrical engineering place. And he hears the story of Montauk, and so he is kind of enamored by the story, and so he takes a trip out to Rhode Island to go to Camp Hero and check out to see what was going on at this facility, and he goes to the where it's all gated off, and he meets one of the security guards there, and he talks to him, and so this guy is just in charge of like staying at the facility and hanging out and making sure nobody breaks in. It's already closed down, and it's just like a pretty much abandoned place right now at the time. And so he talks to this security guard and somehow like convinces him to let him in on the property and takes him on a tour through like the buildings and shit. And as he's walking around the building, he starts to have these flashbacks, saying like, I know this building. Why do I know this building? So he starts walking around the building. Eventually gets into an area, and he's like, there's a set of stairs down here, and he's like correct with all these things. And then gets into an area where it's still operational, I guess. And so he goes down into this place and then comes around the corner and then finds an office that has his name plate on the desk.
Yeah.
And so he goes in there and sees Preston Nichols. He's like the second, like assistant director or something like that.
Yeah, that's
of the facility.
Yeah.
And then he finally remembers, has this vision of he's been living a double life, one where he's just this electrical engineer, the other one as he's the operator of this facility.
Yeah.
For this secret thing that's happening. And that's why he gets in, is because the security guard recognizes him as the director of the program and gives him a badge. And like he gets into the facility and finds his nameplate on one of the desks. So then he has this epiphany that he has been living two lives. One where he's the deputy director.
Yeah.
And the other one where he's just this electrical engineer. So at that point, he starts kind of tracking down who he is in this other life, and starts finding all these other people that have allegedly been in this program and have gone through, sat in the Montauk chair, and then that's where he finds Duncan and Ed.
Yeah. So we got to backtrack a minute. This is where shit gets so swirly. Is after visiting the reptilian planet, Duncan starts to have like pains and he's weakened and stuff. So they go back to Montauk in the time that they left, and John von Neumann tells him like Duncan's not well. Every time he travels and uses the chair, it makes him physically worse. And so he tells these two, we have to send you back to the Philadelphia experiment and you have to dismantle the equipment so that that experiment can never happen. Simultaneously, we have to preserve your consciousness, both of you. So we have to put your consciousness subdued into basically a fetus.
Yeah.
And so they go back, they destroy the experiment, and then Ed's consciousness gets put into a person who, when he's born, his name is Al Bielek. And then Duncan, on the other hand, they send him back and they tell him, you need to start fucking. You need to bear a son so that we could put his consciousness into your consciousness into your son's body. And so at the time he only had a daughter, but later on had a son. So when the son was born later on, he adapted Duncan's consciousness, and he was named Duncan Jr. It's so hard to even tell because it's so fucking convoluted.
Yeah.
So they go back and they destroy it. Al Bielek gets born sometime later, and then Duncan Jr. is born at some point later on. I'm not sure on the dates, but Al Bielek he's a retired, I think he was an electrical engineer as well, but he's retired and he's watching HBO one night and sees the movie The Philadelphia Experiment, and it triggers all these memories to just start flooding back.
Yeah.
And so he starts doing all these conferences and like phenomenons basically, and like telling his story, and then he meets up with somebody he's convinced is his brother Duncan. So they hook up and they start talking, and then they both decide, like, let's take a trip over to Montauk. And when they get there, they are greeted by Preston Nichols, who's like, hey, I've been expecting you guys.
Yeah.
And so that whole like jump back and forth thing is really hard to track, and that was like the hardest thing that I could wrap my mind around.
Yeah, because the dates get all messed up, and you can never get a square answer on like who is who and when and where.
Yeah, even in researching it, it's like half the people who are, regurgitating the story like we are have this version, and another half have this version, and then the dates subtly change like the telephone game. So It's hard to keep any of it really square.
Well, that's what a lot of them also talk about is, so Preston Nichols and there was another guy, Peter Moon, who was involved with writing this book called the Montauk Project in Time or something like that.
Yeah, Chronicles of Time.
Chronicles of Time. And so they worked on this book and wrote this book, and then the book did pretty well, actually. And so they wrote 2 more books after that, like follow-up books to the Manhattan Project story. And through all 3 of the books, like the timelines kind of change, and a lot of stuff is added and taken out and like reworked into like a situation where everything works. And their excuse for that is like, well, things have changed and things keep changing because of the different timelines, and so like things that I remember change as time goes on, and it's like the butterfly effect, how you go back in time and change one thing, it's going to change a whole bunch of other things just in slight ways,
Yeah.
Which, could make sense to a point.
I think it can, because keep in mind a lot of my knowledge or wisdom about time travel, a lot of it's based on movies.
Yeah.
And a lot of theoretical stuff that I've read from Einstein and Rosen and all those guys, where they describe it as possible, but it does have ramifications. So I think about branch timelines, where something occurs on A timeline, but something has changed, so now we're actually on B timeline, so whatever you remember from A timeline never actually existed.
Yeah.
And each time you would change time, you're on a different timeline now.
Yeah.
So if you travel to timeline C, A and B no longer exist. But you still have memories from those timelines because you were still alive. So that's also its own weird, convoluted thing to try to process. But
totally makes sense, though.
It does. I mean, let's say as soon as we're done recording this, we go back in time, and instead of me coming over to record this, I just stay home. But I'm still going to remember having done it. It just never happened.
Yeah. You're looking for it to post it, and you're like, where the fuck is that file?
I swear. It's
even hit record.
You're like, did you fucking delete it?
So, there's the three people now. Preston, Al Bielek, and Duncan.
Yeah.
So they get together and they start doing regressions with each other. So Preston claims that he has this ability to unlock repressed memories and like...
In a very specific way.
Yeah, he has to take you alone into a room. You have to get naked, and then he scans your body with his hands and does these like massages and jerks your fucking ween. I guess. True story. I mean, this is what he would do: is like take you in this room, molest you, and then like you'd come out with these, regressed memories of being abducted by aliens and traveling through time. And
well, a lot of it was the Montauk boys.
Yeah, being part of this project.
Yeah,
Montauk.
the ones that were captured, used as batteries, and then released. And it wasn't just that. A lot of them have tales of physical and sexual abuse. And being strapped to the chair. And
so part of the project also was, so they were trying to develop a way of enhancing people's psychic abilities.
Yeah.
And so they would take people into this place and see if they had psychic abilities like being able to remote view or, telekinesis or like manifestation of like whatever objects. And so by doing this, or in trying to be able to do this, they were testing out different mind-altering drugs. They were using LSD. That's where some people believe that the MK Ultra project, after it was allegedly shut down, just transferred into called the Rainbow Project, was moved to Montauk and then continued there by using LSD, psilocybin, methamphetamines.
Sounds like a good time to
to try to enhance people's psychokinetic energy or abilities to manipulate things with their mind. So there was a lot of talk about like them using these drugs and like, which we've talked about it before with psychedelics and stuff like that, being able to open up your mind to be able to increase your bandwidth and and the possibility of maybe, I don't know, being pushed into a direction of having more psychic abilities, I guess you'd have to say is plausible.
Yeah, I'm definitely on that side where I say that's feasible.
Yeah.
Because just from my own experience with it, where you don't feel like tethered to reality. And there's definitely something to be said there, especially when you think about within the realm of psychedelics, like DMT in particular, where people across the world will have a DMT experience and a lot of them see the same shit.
Yeah.
People who have never communicated, there's people in villages that don't even have TV or anything end up seeing the same thing as like you or I would see.
Right.
The fairies or the goblins or whatever you want to call them, where there is that kind of hive mind connectivity. So who's to say you can't tap into more psychoactive energy or anything like that while you're under the influence of these different things?
Right.
Seems possible to me.
Yeah. So, yeah. So they start talking, after he's written these books, they start talking at these conventions, like Dave said earlier. Going to, like, paranormal conferences and, like, UFO abductee and, like, conspiracy theorist kind of conventions. And throughout going through these things, there was at least 25 guys that contacted Preston Nichols and kind of claim that, you know, they remember being part of this project, and so they go. At least 25 of them that have, you know, been confirmed go to meet up with Preston Nichols and have this laying on of hands done through through Preston Nichols, and regression and have these memories brought back of, you know, what they did at their time during the Montauk project. And one of them specifically, I can't remember what his name is, Sterlo?
Yeah, something like that. The bald guy with the beard.
Yeah. Stuart Sterlo or something like that. Probably getting it totally wrong because I'm still halfway asleep, but so he gets in contact with Nichols and goes
he got
through
contacted all right.
Yeah. Oh, he was contacted real hard. And so he goes through there, and then is it him that goes back in time? I think it's him.
Yeah.
So he was part of the Montauk project, and so his recounts are like he gets put into the Montauk chair. They blast him with this frequency, and they task him to go back in time and murder Jesus Christ.
Yep.
And so he goes back in time to a day before
the crucifixion.
The crucifixion, yeah. And he has a pistol somehow. And so he goes to Jesus and finds Jesus, I guess, because they knew where he was going to be. And tries to shoot him, and like the bullets bounce off of him. And Jesus tells him, "You're not going to be able to kill me, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a vial of my blood." And so he gives...
I'm sorry, I can't help but laughing at how fucking stupid that part of the story is.
So he gives him a vial of his blood, and Sterlo comes back through time and delivers the vial of blood to the people at Montauk. They're like, "Okay, well, you don't have to bring it to us. You have to take it to this other Christ being on Mars." And so he stays in the chair, and they send him to Mars, and where he finds this Christ-like figure to give him this vial of blood for some reason. And so he sees this Christ figure standing on top of this hill, and so he walks up to him and hands him the vial of blood, and then the guy turns around, and it's the Christ figure is Duncan. And so they realize that Duncan really is the Messiah, and so this person he knows as Duncan is actually Jesus Christ. The second coming of Jesus.
It's so fucking dumb.
Yeah.
It's
So he's the Messiah now. Duncan is.
Oh, Jesus. Do you think what really happened is he went up, pulled out his gun, and Jesus was like, "No!" Put up both of his hands in front of his face, and that's how he got the holes in his hands?
I think that what happened is that they went over to... He got regressed and remember sitting in the Montauk chair, and they were testing out all these crazy drugs on him, and he was fucking shit-faced off all this shit and having these hallucinations of going to find Jesus. And
yeah, while Preston Nichols was fucking beating his dick.
Yeah.
I'm scanning. Hand scanning.
Oh, yeah. So, to clarify, this whole thing, they believed this theory in... So this is like an actual theory, is that like... Oh, who was the scientist who was like a Nazi scientist who believed in this energy called Argo, or Orgo?
Yeah, Organ.
Organ energy.
Yeah.
And to tap into this organ energy it's like basically having an orgasm.
Yeah.
So if you can tap into this energy, you can, create all these wild things from your imagination, and you have more power in your mind in this organ state.
Yeah, I've tried that pickup line many times.
Yeah.
Never works.
Yeah.
Hey, baby, you want to go to another universe?
Yeah.
I got away.
And usually the dude's like, no.
It's not usually. It's only like 60%.
Sure, babe.
It's, yeah. That part of the story, I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
There was one thing I forgot to point out, was that when John von Neumann tasked those guys to go back and destroy the machine for Philadelphia, he said he was going to use a coin phrase or a trigger phrase on Duncan, and Duncan was basically going to open a portal to another dimension that was going to let this monster loose and just come in and destroy all the tech, all the files, everything, and kill everybody who was there. And basically erase all traces that anything ever happened there.
Mm-hmm.
And the phrase was, "The time is now."
Yeah.
Okay, a portal didn't
Anybody
open.
listening to
We're
this?
You see a news report in an hour, a monster's been let loose. Well, shit.
If you are starting to have flashbacks, you can contact us for some Oregon research. I'm not jerking any dicks, though, this time.
Yeah, I could use a little hand scan. Just flex out for that. Yeah, and then this monster comes out, and the way that they describe it was 8 to 10 feet tall, hairy, ferocious, smelly. So basically a Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm.
Which furthers my theory that the Bigfoot is like tied to everything.
What year was Bigfoot first? Well, the famous Patterson-Gimlin film?
That was in like 68 or something like that.
Well, I guess if time travels too, it doesn't really matter.
No. Which, side note, I do think that video is horseshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as limited as film was and as expensive as it was just to have a camera in those days, and you just happen to catch it with the very limited amount of film you had, like, there are people who go out there now with digital cameras and they fill hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage and catch nothing.
Yeah.
But you, with your 20-minute recording capacity, were able to do that. Plus, the guy who said he was dressed up in the costume and he has the exact same walk, the same gait, everything. Yeah, it's horseshit.
Yeah. As fun as that video is, I think it's fake also.
There's a lot more way compelling videos of Bigfoot than that.
Yeah.
I think that was just like the beginning of that zeitgeist,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like the people who faked the Loch Ness picture, like they admitted that they faked it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's all these things that have come out since about Loch Ness where they think they actually found it. And you're like, yeah, it was probably real, but somebody was capitalizing for popularity.
Right.
Which is dumb. Yeah. Preston Nichols just be out there raping young men.
Yeah.
Sick
He's
fuck.
out there just fucking jerking weens, dude.
Just
Maybe he is. He is that Sasquatch.
Could be. I mean, your mind's going to go to scary places.
Yeah, and if anybody's out there that's like thinks this story is fucking crazy, you want to like listen to like the story from the actual people. There's a documentary on Preston Nichols, and it's called the Montauk Project Chronicles or something like that. And it's a video, and you can hear all these people talking about their experiences in from them themselves. And it's like what's his name, Duncan, seems like a smart guy, but like he's an electrical engineer, and he talks about, you know,
Al Bielek,
yeah. And so he talks about, you know, shit, and he sounds like a pretty smart guy, but just the stuff that he's talking about, hard to swallow. But I don't know, fantastical story.
Yeah, the problem with Al Bielek's story isn't the story itself. It's that after he gained some popularity, some notoriety, he started just kind of making shit up.
Yeah.
Because it was, the nuclear war that's going to happen that led Ed and Duncan to go to that, you know, first timeline in 2037 is going to happen in 2005. And then it didn't happen. Then it was, it's 2010. And then that didn't happen. And then he's like, it's 2015. And he died in 2011, so we don't have an update.
Yeah.
Like, hey, when's the next apocalypse, dude? We'd like to know. But his story got more and more fantastical as time went on. And it's the same thing with Preston Nichols. Like, he wrote that first book, and it was super interesting and compelling, and there was a lot of things that made people go, maybe. But with that second, third, and I think fourth book, he admitted that he was making shit up to throw in the book to make it more fantastical, to get more people to buy it and read it. So there's so much credibility lost there. Plus the loss of credibility with Preston Nichols, given that he was acting like a fucking scout leader out there and just molesting young men.
Yeah. Not even a scout leader. Scout leader at least fucking teach him how to make some s'mores.
That's so terrible.
You can eat a s'more after you've been molested. I don't know.
I mean, I'm not a big fan of s'mores, but something's better than nothing, I guess.
Yeah. I like a good snack after a whack.
After a good hand scanning?
Yeah. I'm just depleted. I need some sugars.
My insulin level is low. I gotta eat something before I go again.
So where are we here?
Let's go back a minute to the Philadelphia experiment. So the whole reason the story even came out. So there was a guy named Morris Jessup. He was a writer. He wrote that book about UFOs in a time where UFOs were not a thing you talk about. And he was an actual scientist. But one day he just received a random letter, and it was from this person detailing the entire Philadelphia experiment. And so him and this person, Carl, whatever the fuck his name is, they ended up corresponding back and forth quite a bit. And that's how he kind of broke the Philadelphia experiment story, which was later turned into a movie, which later turned Al Bielek to remember all these things. Now, with that, in these conferences, he was describing things that happened from the movie, which should be a triggering thing, but that little part in the back of my brain goes, what if that was an actual thing that happened, and he's describing it not because he saw the movie, but because it happened? And that's always a big conundrum for me. And the other conundrum I have is, okay, let's say the Philadelphia experiment happened, and then later Ed and Duncan were sent back in time to destroy the equipment so the experiment couldn't happen, which is why we don't actually know if it happened or not, because now we're living in a branch timeline.
Yeah, it reminds me of like this one time I went to California, and it was around Christmas time, and I went to this place, and it actually got hijacked by terrorists, and so I had to fight my way out of Nagatomi Tower.
Oh,
Nagatomi Tower.
Nagatomi. I remember you didn't have shoes on the whole time.
My feet were all cut up. I actually ended up with just enough bullets to kill everybody except for the last guy who was the main terrorist.
Yeah, no, you shot him
in the... threw him off the fucking...
Yeah, you
tower.
shot him in the stomach and he was falling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I remember you telling me all about it.
Yep. Crazy life, dude. I've lived this. I didn't really actually remember that until one of the last times I was fucking jerking it, dude. It just popped in my head.
You were getting into that organ energy. It was only in the last second that you recalled the whole thing.
I was like,
then you're like, yeah, I was in that organ.
Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker!
Like, so I was sitting on my couch getting into that organ energy, and then this movie fucking Die Hard came on, and it was having flashbacks. Does anybody want to pay me to hear my story?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, like, I assume that there was a lot of stories out there about the Montauk Project, which led to the movie being made, so, you know, how much of the stories that are out there that he's just picking up information from, and how much of the movie he's just, like, ripping off into his story.
Well, there's also that theory, and I know I've talked about it on here before, where, and this is some tinfoil hat shit, but I entertain it because that's my jam, where the government is informing on filmmakers to make movies for slow disclosure, which is why you have Spielberg's Close Encounter of the Third Kind, where allegedly a lot of that script was ghostwritten by people in the government, or Men in Black, or, you know, any other number of crazy conspiracy movies. Could that fall into that same category? Granted, there's no proof that that's actually happening.
Yeah.
But who's to say it's not? Nobody.
Yeah. Well, most normal people will say that it's not happening, but again, there's no proof to, you know, say that it hasn't happened.
So that kind of brings me around to something else that I find super interesting about Montauk, is some of the more, I will say, proof positive elements. So in the 80s, this group of explorers went in there, and they had their video camera and everything, their big giant fucking VHS recording device, and they're filming around the ground level in Montauk, totally just hop the fence, and they start finding receipts for like $40,000 or $50,000 worth of food and supplies. But the base has been defunct that whole time. But this is like a recent receipt. Who's buying all these supplies and then just leaving the receipt there?
Yeah.
Or one that I really liked was, this one guy was telling his story about his uncle was an electrician, and they called him out to come repair some shit, and he went in this elevator and went down 4 floors, and on each floor he had to take a shower and decontaminate. Excuse me. Got down to where he needed to make the repairs. He made the repairs, and then every floor on the way up he had to stop and shower and decontaminate. He couldn't bring his tools in. They supplied everything. He just needed to come in and do it. And then while he was walking, these guys were holding up like tarps on both sides of him, so he couldn't actually see anything outside. They just walked him to where the repairs needed to be made. He made them and then fucked off. Or one of my favorites is the Montauk Monster. You've seen the pictures, right?
Yeah.
The like pig-looking thing with a beak. And granted, not far from Montauk is Plum Island, the animal testing facility. But it's not to say that that creature, whatever it was, came from there, or did it come from Montauk?
Yeah.
But there's the story about the family who found that thing washed up on the beach, they picked it up and they wrapped it up in like hefty bags, took it home, put it in their deep freezer in the garage, tried to call some people to come identify it or whatever, and then some men in black, air quotations, knocked on the door, were like, hey, we need that specimen that you found. And they're like, no, yeah, you're not taking it. And then they went out for an evening at some point, like to a movie or whatever, came back and it was gone. So that's like, why would some random dudes in suits want this strange looking animal that you found if it wasn't to like get rid of evidence?
Yeah. I would think that, in my mind, it's probably an animal that escaped from this testing facility and they're trying to recover it because it's probably radioactive.
Or carrying some kind of pathogen or something like that.
So that actually has happened twice. Once in 2008, and then once it was like 2020.
Yeah.
And it was the same. It said that the animal was very similarly, very much the same animal. I can't say that word right now for some reason. Similarly shaped.
You did it. I'm proud.
Yeah. So they're saying it was looked like a dog, about the size of a dog, medium-sized dog, and it had like ruffles of skin around its, I guess, knees, or where the joints of the arms, legs would be.
Yeah.
And then instead of a snout like a regular dog or whatever, it had a beak on the top.
Yeah.
Portion. But yeah, once in 2008 and once in, it was like 2020 or 2019, they found another one. But they're like the professionals that have looked at the pictures, I guess, from the 2020 animal, say that it was a raccoon that had mange or something like that. And
raccoons still don't have beaks.
Yeah. And so that's their explanation for it.
Yeah, when you look at it, it almost looks like a hybrid between a big dog and a pig with a fucking beak. But both of them washed up and they had like a band around its arm, like a tag, which is also super weird. That's where like my crazy mind is like, what if it's an interplanetary thing or interdimensional creature that got through and escaped and washed ashore because it drowned trying to escape.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So that's where, your mind has to go to, like, Stranger Things, where, these beings are being manifested or escaping this other realm, like the Demogorgons and those little season 4 or whatever, where they find those little rats or whatever that get bigger and bigger as time goes on in the show. But so yeah, I think they did a really good job on Stranger Things, like kind of like giving those kind of Easter eggs of tie-ins that you can actually, okay, this is kind of representing that, and this is kind of representing that. One of the things I was listening to was they were talking about how when 11 like breaks up with her boyfriend and says she's going to go back to being a hero,
Camp Hero,
and it's referring to Camp Hero. Yeah.
See, again, that ties back into the whole movie thing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, make sure she says this line.
Right.
The only thing I struggle with on that is, like, why even bother putting it out there? But with a story like this, it's so outlandish, and the people involved in it are such huge caricatures, and they have so much doubt casted on them because of what they have done and what they do, that it makes it really hard to believe. But to me, that makes it just a little bit more believable. Because what if Preston Nichols is telling the truth, but you don't want to believe him because he's a fucking kid diddler?
Yeah.
Or Al Bielek, who's, by all intents and purposes, you know, an intelligent guy and well-read and everything, but kind of just wants the attention. You know, it's hard to dispel what you believe is true and what you believe isn't because of the people involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a hard time believing Nichols' story just because he's such a fucking weirdo. Like, even in that documentary series, I guess, when the camera crew went to go to interview him, he was saying, yeah, I could do a reading on you, let's go. And, like, trying to convince all the crew members to go and let him touch their peepees. And it's like, dude, this guy just can't not try to touch peepees, I guess.
No, he's a sick fuck for sure.
Yeah.
Like, there's no denying that.
Yeah, and how much... Maybe he's just super convincing when he's touching your pee-pee to make you believe that you...
Maybe he just gives the double hand McTwisty or something. I don't know. You're just like, oh, I'll tell you whatever you want.
This is a technique I learned in Montauk.
Now I'm going to add to that a technique I learned in Malaysia. Gross.
So yeah, the story's super hard to follow. You almost need to like go down different timelines to try to get each timeline straight.
Yeah.
But it jumps back and forth so many times that it's hard to follow and hard to like keep straight in your mind of what's going on. Maybe that's part of their plan, is like make it confusing so that like it doesn't make sense, but it makes sense at the same time. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, last night was the first time I actually put it together in like a linear path to where I actually understood what was going on. And I've been hearing these stories for 10 years, you know, and I just now actually have the full picture. And even sitting here, us trying to describe it, I'm sure a listener's going to go, I didn't follow any of that.
Yeah.
And it's how many videos I had to watch and podcasts I listened to, and I literally had to sit down and make a timeline chart and then like write down little character bios just so I could actually fully understand it.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to put it together in 2 hours or whatever, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Even trying to make a fucking set of movies on it, you'd literally have to spell it out for the audience.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Ed Cameron went back in time, but his consciousness was planted in this fetus, who's Al Bielek. Just that right there, you're like, what?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
When was it implanted? Was it before he died or before he was born?
No, it was implanted when he was a fetus, but it was subconscious until he saw the movie.
Right. Oh, yeah,
and then triggered it.
That's right.
So it's so just... Like I said, it's fucking nuttier than squirrel shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, let me peruse right here, see if I missed anything that's fun. No, that's pretty much all my notes. Oh, there was some stuff with the radar station. So some of the tests they ran was actually to use the radar station to manipulate the populace nearby.
Mm.
So allegedly, and this one's far-fetched to me, allegedly Preston Nichols sat down with the sheriff outside of the base, and the sheriff was like, yeah, it seems like all the crimes are happening at this time for this long, which, how do you quantify that data?
Yeah.
At that time, like, are you sitting down with all the police reports and just marking down the times of all these? And mostly it would affect teenagers or young men between 10 and 15. Or one thing that I briefly heard was like pregnant women going into labor at certain times. Just all this other stuff that they were allegedly using that radar dish from to manipulate the populace outside, and you're just like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, to kind of test on the local population, people there.
Yeah, trying to make people crazy.
Yeah.
Just to see if they could do it.
So yeah, there's reports in that town from that sheriff talking about like a certain time of day, like all the teenagers would conjugate, like gather up together and kind of just be in a trance in the town for like 2 hours, and all of a sudden they would just all disperse.
Yeah.
Stories about like herds of animals going crazy, and so there'd be like a bunch of deer just crash through a window in the town.
I forgot about that one.
And kind of like get discombobulated and run through the town and like crash through windows and of like homes or like businesses, and then look visibly like they don't know what's going on. Just weird shit like that, but you know, you don't really hear about stuff like that happening, so I guess if that did happen, it might be a weird story that you would remember.
Well, I mean, radar is essentially a radio wave, or a small electromagnetic field. So you have a satellite the size of a fucking house, and you point it at a populace, and you put out a frequency powerful enough, it's going to kind of manipulate your brain.
Yeah.
It's just reality, especially if you have pacemakers, metal plates, things like that. You're going to be more susceptible to it because you're being basically microwaved in a way.
Yeah.
So it's going to discombobulate your brain.
Well, they even have that supposedly now as a form of crowd control, as like a sonic burst.
Yeah, it's a microwave beam.
Yeah, a non-lethal weapon that they can use on like large crowds, like kind of like a water cannon. You see like riots and stuff, and then the police or military, whatever, show up, and they have these tanks that have water cannons.
Yeah,
kind of the same thing, but they're using sound frequency just to like deter people from hanging out in that area.
Yeah, and I've seen those videos, and I've watched the people's testimony who've been hit with it. They're like, my mind just like went blank. My body felt like it was burning, but my insides felt cold, and it's like, yeah, it kind of seems like you just got hit with a microwave burst.
Yeah.
And as for the teens getting together and all going into a trance, it's like, yeah, school's out at 3:30, meet at 3:45, let's get stoned and
let's get into a trance.
Yeah. It's more about, oh, we got some of that Montauk stuff.
Yeah.
Let's hit that.
We got that Montauk Kush. Gonna send us into the fucking underworld, or what is it called? The upside down.
Dude, I got some Montauk Red. Let's feed it to the dogs and the local deer and see what happens.
Or they're just growing it outside the town, and then a herd of deer come through and eat a bunch of fucking Montauk Kush. Raid a fucking bakery.
That's where it's at, dude.
Yeah, we solved it.
Yeah, just like the burning bush in the Bible.
Yeah,
it was just a psilocybin.
Acacia.
Yeah, psilocybin plant. That's all that was.
Well, it's an acacia tree, and the acacia has DMT in it.
See?
Yeah,
it's just DMT around Montauk. It's funny. We have all this speculation about it, but really it's just like 25 dudes sitting downstairs in the lab. They're supposed to be doing, science, and they're just like, dude, it'd be crazy as if there was like a phrase I could say that would just conjure a monster and just destroy everything.
Really, that's what it came down to for me. It was like, if they did continue the MK Ultra program, where that's confirmed thing that actually happened, the government did that, it's been confirmed and admitted that MK Ultra actually happened, and they didn't actually shut down the program, they just transferred it to this other site and continued with like mind-expanding drugs, you know, that's where my mind is. Like, I really feel like if there's any truth to most of these stories, it's probably, you know, how much of it is they're being given illicit drugs and mind-altering drugs, and then kind of walked through, almost brainwashed into believing that, like, these things are happening, and to see how far their minds can go and their minds can be manipulated through these drugs. That makes more sense to me than, like, all the crazy shit that they're talking about.
Yeah, I largely agree with that. I do think there is much more than meets the eye, even on just, you know, using drugs to experiment. But I also kind of think that some of the stuff is real, but like I said, it's so outlandish and so far-fetched that you wouldn't believe it anyway, even if it was real.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not agreeing with all of it. I think Al B looks full of shit. I think Preston Nichols is full of shit. You look at Preston Nichols, you're like, yeah, no, you're gross.
Yeah.
And the whole kid diddling thing makes it so much worse. But I think that there is a little bit more truth to what's happening at Montauk than that. I mean, the receipts that were found, the people that even to this day still say that they see movement, and people around the base, even though it's kind of far away from the populace, there are people who literally watch it all day long and all night to see if there's anything going on. And obviously it's on the coast, so nothing has to be trucked in. It can all come in by boat. But still, there's movement, there's things happening, there are people coming and going to a place that's just conservation area now.
Yeah.
What the fuck would they be doing there?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as innocuous as we want to believe, but it is easy for me to believe that this big, huge story was crafted around that place so that people would go, nah, there's nothing going on there.
Yeah.
There's no way that's real, you know?
Yeah. Kind of like a Area 51 cover story type thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like they admit to a half-truth to get people not, you know...
So you're not looking at the
so
whole
you're not
truth.
looking at the whole truth, yeah. Yeah, I agree there. I mean, I do believe that they're, you know, they're doing things there that they're more than meets the eye, you know, more than just a radio station, you know, or a radar station.
Yeah.
And I will even, you know, say that I don't disbelieve that there were tests on people and still ongoing today, you know, happening there. But yeah, most of the stuff they talk about, yeah, I think is kind of made up and fabricated to try to sell books in their story. But like, I don't, you know, disbelieve that they're not doing those tests there, and they didn't do tests there on people, you know, in a super secretive way. Almost like to a point of torturing people. I don't put that past, you know, the secret agencies that...
Oh, no, because it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Or even... Have you ever seen the congressional hearing on the people who testified against Project Midnight?
Uh-uh.
Do you know what that is?
It's familiar.
Or, sorry, it's Climax.
Oh,
Or Operation Climax, I think.
What is it?
So it's basically all these young women were essentially abducted by the government, and they were taught how to seduce men, how to pleasure men, and all that. And then when that came out that was a real thing, these women went to testify in front of Congress that these things happened to them. And even Bill Clinton at the time was like, addressed it and said, you know, I'm sorry, this should never have happened, blah, 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 it is a real thing. So it just kind of comes to light that there are people that have been wronged by these programs, these secret government programs, and they come out and they try to tell their story. And unless like the government's caught red-handed, they don't admit to it. So even with Montauk, let's say there are real Montauk boys, and they've come out and they've told their stories and they got diddled and everything else, they're not getting any kind of like recompense for that.
Yeah.
Because we still don't actually know the truth about what's going on there.
Maybe that was kind of a diversion tactic for, the government set Nichols up to do that type of shit, just to kind of deter people from coming out and saying that,
yeah.
I was a Montauk boy. Okay, we'll go talk to Preston Nichols. Psych. Yeah,
no. I'll keep it to myself.
Well, who knows?
Well,
that would deter me from coming out and saying I'm a Montauk
dude,
boy.
You look at the guy; he's disgusting.
Yeah,
it's like an ogre on crack.
Yeah.
He's just ugly.
He looks like one of the fucking monsters that came out of Montauk.
He is the monster that fucked
the
everything
monster,
up.
yeah. He's the fucking Demogorgon.
So what about the Philadelphia experiment?
I believe that they were doing the degaussing technology, and I even tend to believe that they possibly made a cloaking device. I don't necessarily believe that it went back in time or like shifted from one place to another. Maybe, but there just isn't any, like a lot of these other things that we've talked about, like MK Ultra and the alien stuff with Area 51, and there's actual evidence instead of just like one or two people's stories about it. Credible witnesses and stuff like that. And both of these things don't seem to really have those backbones, the credible backbone story. So, I don't know. It's hard to believe that either one of them was real.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same.
Real in the sense that we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm pretty much on the same page. I mean, we talked about doctoring the books and certain documents and other things that kind of disrupt the problem or disrupt the idea for me is like there was no documentation of Ed and Duncan even being on the ship.
Yeah.
Which again could go back to doctoring. The thing that always kind of gives it a little bit of credibility to me is that Tesla was involved. And that we got to do a whole episode on Tesla, but that guy did things that should not have been possible at that time, especially. And did he potentially build a device that could cloak a ship? Probably. There's always a lot of talk about did Tesla build a time machine? And there's a lot of signs that say it's very likely.
Yeah.
So the fact that he was involved gives it some credibility to me that it's definitely possible. And the fact that he was kicked off the project, so now John Voight Newman was in charge of tech that he didn't understand because Tesla built it. Could they have just fucked something up or not used it accordingly? That's very possible in my mind.
Yeah.
And I know that's a little harebrained, but you got to really dig deep into Tesla to understand.
Tesla was so brilliant, so far beyond everybody else's mind. And
that motherfucker wasn't even human.
Yeah.
I'm convinced he was an alien.
Yeah. It's kind of the same realm as like Elon Musk, coming out with these, he talks about it. He talks about shit, and then you're just like, what are you talking about? And then, takes a few years or a decade or so for other people's minds to catch up to what this person was talking about. If you were talking about a computer or even a cell phone, you go back to 1950 and talk about a cell phone, people are going to think you're fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But these people's minds that work in a way that's different from 99% of the population, they're going to think you're crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is...
Or magic.
Yeah, magic.
Or the devil.
Magic is just science we don't understand yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what gives it some credibility to me, but the story being told about it, not so much.
Yeah.
The whole Ed and Duncan thing, it just sounds like horse shit. Al Bielek, definitely horse shit.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in their story that I like and seems within the realm of like traceable, or not traceable, but like, okay, yeah, I'm with you here,
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to parts of the story where you're just, okay, well, that's fucking bullshit. And so how much, and then they have to backtrack back through a mile of bullshit to get to the the truth of what they were talking about. So yeah, I mean, the whole story is kind of like, I do like everything else that we've talked about before, where there's traces of truth,
Yeah,
and how much of that, the rest of it is just like total horseshit.
makes for an interesting story.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it would be really cool to have like a movie series about it,
yeah,
but you'd have to inflate the story even more than it's already inflated just to be able to tell an interesting story in a movie.
yeah.
Because you're not going to want to just watch a movie where some guy narrates it. Okay, and so what happened here was they had to send Ed and Duncan back in time and put their consciousness in other bodies. Like, you wouldn't understand it at all. It's fun, though.
Yeah, they kept on, like, in all the stories, because they switch names, right?
Yeah, so Ed Cameron becomes Al Bielek.
Right.
And then Duncan is still
stays
Junkin,
Duncan.
but he's Junkin Jr.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting story. If anybody listening, wants to find out more, and that was another thing that's like, all the research and all the things that I was trying to look up on Montauk, most of it has to do with Preston Nichols and Duncan and Swordlow,
Yeah.
whatever his name is.
That guy is 1,000,000% full of shit.
Yeah.
When you watch his story and the claims he makes are like, dude, just stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that he can transport himself through time and space to different galaxies without the chair, and he can do all these crazy things. Like, man, get the fuck out of here. Who do you think you are, Martian Manhunter?
Yeah. Well, he's Jesus Hunter.
Yeah.
Swordlow Jesus Hunter.
The Jesus Hunter.
That could be a series on itself.
Yeah, watch out.
But yeah, definitely, I mean, check out some other videos and see if you can make sense of it better than we did.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard. Like, it's hard enough to research it. It's even harder to kind of like put it down in a meaningful way, to where it's like, if anybody listening followed anything we talked about, cool, that's a win.
Yeah.
One is a win. So, but yeah, even when you listen to other people talk about it, watch other videos, like, there's so many subtle variations of the story that it's just, in researching it, you have to go, okay, I'm going to throw away this version and prefer this version.
Yeah.
Given that most of it's fiction, it's like, I can pick and choose. It's fair.
Yeah, I think even in the books, Nichols adds in there is like, you can take it as fiction or fact. It's up to you.
Which,
like, what?
But it's listed as nonfiction.
Yeah.
But you prelude the book with that line, you just took away a big fucking credibility point in my book.
Yeah. I mean, tell me it's real or tell me it's fake. Especially if you're claiming that it's real, but whatever. Fun story.
Yeah, super fun story. I'm actually kind of glad we got that one done in the timeline we did, because there's just so much that you can throw in and talk about, but
Yeah.
it just felt like it became unnecessary.
A lot, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of backstory that goes into all of these other classified projects that kind of tie into it, but aren't super relevant to the main story.
Yeah, they're not, and some of it is just more fun fact. Like talk about MK Ultra. Charles Manson was part of that project, and when he came out of that, he was just fucking batshit crazy. Kind of makes sense with the pathway he went down.
Yeah.
But the government never actually took any credibility for that. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. But
it's fun to throw that stuff in there. It paints a broader picture.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 90% horseshit.
Yeah.
The whole thing.
Yeah. So wrap it up. What do you think they were doing in Montauk?
I honestly do believe that they were experimenting with questionable technology. Just for the simple fact, the location. For one, you're basically on an island, technically a peninsula. But let's say you're playing with some kind of time-altering technology, and something goes bad. What's going to be your best safe way to stop that?
Containment on an island, I would think.
You have enough charges basically planted on the base of the island that you could set those off and sink the whole fucking island.
Yeah.
Every piece of technology, especially from that time frame, is susceptible to water. So whatever you got going on is going to stop once that island drowns. That's like number one for me. Number two is you have plausible deniability, especially with the creatures, because you have the animal test lab on Plum Island nearby. You can hide the fact that it is a much bigger facility by saying, oh, it was a gun nest, and then it became a radar station because of World War II. And then you're also still kind of close enough on that side to Russia that you, during the Cold War, you can say, well, we have to maintain this just in case the Russians attack.
Yeah.
So the whole thing was kind of the perfect cover-up. But I do believe they were doing something really sketchy with things that they probably don't understand.
Yeah.
How about you?
I 100% agree. I think that the whole facade was functional, but it was more than just what they were saying it was. I think that they probably were doing tests on people and to some capacity, and tests on people and animals and brain function and even abilities, kind of like the Men Who Stare at Goats.
Yeah.
Remote viewing. But yeah, I think that the story that Nichols and Al Bielek and Swerdlow have come up with is 95% bullshit and 5% child molestation.
Well, even you think about that, like, what's the difference from Montauk Island to Manhattan, and how many homeless kids are in Manhattan that you could just go swipe up, nobody's going to notice them missing.
Now, we keep on saying child molesting, but all of the reported Montauk boys that actually contacted and had these hands-on readings were actually
they're
adults. But we're still going to label him a kid diddler.
Yeah, it makes it way more fun.
He's a weirdo, dude. He's a fucking gross guy.
Sick fuck.
It was fun, though.
It was fun. I'm glad we actually tackled this because we've alluded to it like a dozen times.
Yeah.
But even in the preparation, I was like, oh, this is going to have to be 2 episodes and all that. And like dealing with the topic, I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Because it's just a fun story. Yeah, we'll kill it there.
All right.
Okay, I love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.